On a sweltering summer evening in Los Angeles, when most residents were settling in for dinner, nobody expected the ordinary apartment complex on Wilshire Boulevard to become the scene of an extraordinary act of heroism. The sun had just begun to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, when smoke started billowing from the third floor of the aging building. Big Shaq, a local basketball coach known for his gentle demeanor despite his towering height, was driving home from practice when he noticed the dark clouds rising against the dimming sky. His heart skipped a beat as he heard the distant screams. Without hesitation, he pulled his car over, his basketball gear forgotten in the back seat. The scene that greeted him was chaos incarnate. Flames had already engulfed several apartments, and the thick smoke made it difficult to breathe. While others stood frozen in shock, recording the scene on their phones, Shaq's mind raced with determination. He knew every second counted. "Call 911, he shouted to the gathering crowd, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to commanding attention on the basketball court. The fire department was on its way, but Shaq could hear the desperate cries for help from inside. The building's residents, many of whom he recognized from his daily commute, were trapped. Without waiting for the authorities, Shaq wrapped his practice towel around his face and charged toward the building. The heat hit him like a wall, but his years of athletic training had prepared him for physical challenges. He moved through the smoke-filled hallway, staying low to the ground where the air was clearer. On the second floor, he found an elderly couple struggling to make their way down the corridor. The woman was supporting her husband, who couldn't walk without his cane. Shaq didn't hesitate. Using his strength, he lifted the man into his arms and guided the woman toward the stairwell, shielding them both from the falling debris. The real challenge came when they reached the building's entrance. The front door had become jammed from the heat, but Shaq's powerful frame proved useful once again. With a mighty push, he forced the door open, allowing not just the couple but several other residents to escape to safety. But Shaq wasn't done. Despite the increasingly dangerous conditions, he knew there were more people inside. The fire had spread to the third floor, where a young mother lived with her twin toddlers. He had often seen them playing in the building's small garden, their laughter brightening everyone's day. Ignoring the burning in his lungs and the sweat pouring down his face, Shaq climbed the stairs again. The smoke was thicker now, and the heat more intense. He could hear the sirens in the distance, but they seemed too far away. The children's cries guided him through the darkness. He found them huddled in their bathroom, where their mother had wisely taken them to escape the worst of the smoke. The woman was trying to keep her children calm while covering their faces with wet towels. The relief in her eyes when she saw Shaq's large figure in the doorway was palpable. Time was running out. The building structure was beginning to groan ominously. Using his coach's voice, calm but firm, Shaq instructed the mother to climb onto his back while he carried both children. The journey down was treacherous, with parts of the ceiling beginning to collapse around them. Just as they reached the ground floor, a thunderous crash echoed through the building. Part of the roof had caved in, but they were already rushing through the exit. As they emerged into the fresh air, the gathered crowd erupted in cheers and applause. The fire department arrived moments later, taking control of the situation and treating those affected by smoke inhalation. Shaq sat on the curb, oxygen mask in hand, watching as paramedics checked on the people he'd helped save. His clothes were soot-stained and singed, but his eyes shone with relief. "I just did what anyone would do," he later told reporters who had gathered at the scene. But everyone knew that wasn't true. His quick thinking and selfless actions had saved multiple lives that day. The elderly couple, the young mother, and her children might not have made it without his intervention. The story of Big Shaq's bravery spread quickly through Los Angeles, touching hearts and inspiring others. Local news channels featured interviews with the residents he'd saved, each sharing their perspective of his heroic acts. The elderly man, still recovering in the hospital, tearfully described how Shaq had carried him to safety like I weighed nothing at all. In the following days, as the community rallied to help the displaced residents, Shaq's basketball players watched their coach with newfound admiration. He had shown them that being a hero isn't about wearing a cape or having superpowers, it's about choosing to act when others need help, no matter the personal risk. In the days following the dramatic rescue, Big Shaq returned to his normal routine at the community center where he coached basketball, but things were noticeably different. Parents would stop him in the hallway to shake his hand, and his young players looked at him with a mix of awe and renewed respect. Yet, true to his humble nature, Shaq focused on helping his team prepare for their upcoming tournament rather than dwelling on his newfound local fame. What most people didn't know was that the fire had affected Shaq more deeply than he let on. Each night, he would wake up thinking about what could have happened if he'd arrived just a few minutes later. The faces of those he'd saved, especially the twin toddlers, haunted his dreams. But rather than letting these thoughts overwhelm him, he channeled them into something positive. During one particularly meaningful practice session, Shaq gathered his young players around him. Basketball isn't just about scoring points, he told them, his voice carrying the weight of recent experience. It's about building strength, not just in your bodies, but in your hearts. It's about being ready to help others when they need you most. The kids listened intently, sensing this wasn't just another coaching speech. The story of his heroism had spread beyond Los Angeles, catching the attention of national media. A major news network wanted to feature him in a special report about everyday heroes, but Shaq was hesitant. He wasn't comfortable being in the spotlight for something he considered a basic human duty. However, the young mother whose twins he'd saved convinced him that sharing his story might inspire others to act courageously in similar situations. During the interview, Shaq revealed something he hadn't told anyone else. Before becoming a basketball coach, he had briefly trained as a firefighter but had to quit due to family responsibilities. Maybe that training stayed with me, he reflected, his eyes distant. When I saw that smoke, everything just clicked into place. I knew I had to act. The impact of the fire extended beyond just the physical rescue. The apartment complex had been home to many low-income families who now needed help rebuilding their lives. Shaq took the initiative to organize a community fundraiser, combining his love for basketball with his desire to help. He arranged a charity tournament, inviting local teams and turning it into a full-day event with food, music, and activities for children. The response from the community was overwhelming. Local businesses donated prizes, restaurants provided food, and people from all over the city came to show their support. The event raised significant funds for the affected families, but more importantly, it brought the community together in a way few had seen before. Children played basketball alongside adults, and neighbors who had barely spoken before found themselves sharing stories and forming connections. The elderly couple Shaq had rescued became regular spectators at his team's games. The husband, slowly recovering from his injuries, would often tell anyone who would listen about how Shaq had carried him down 3 flights of stairs. His wife brought homemade cookies to every game, ensuring Shaq and his players never went hungry during their breaks. One particularly touching moment came when the twin toddlers and their mother visited during a practice session. The kids, too young to understand the full significance of what had happened, simply knew Shaq as the big friendly giant who had helped them. They ran around the court, their laughter echoing through the gymnasium, while their mother watched with grateful tears in her eyes. Shaq used this opportunity to teach his players about fire safety, working with local firefighters to organize workshops at the community center. He wanted to ensure that everyone, especially the young people he mentored, knew how to respond in emergency situations. Being prepared isn't about being fearless, he would explain. It's about knowing what to do even when you are afraid. The fire department recognized Shaq's continued commitment to community safety by making him an honorary firefighter. During the ceremony, the fire chief spoke about how Shaq's actions represented the best of human nature. Sometimes the most remarkable acts of heroism come from ordinary people who simply refuse to stand by when others are in danger, the chief said, as Shaq stood quietly, accepting the honor with characteristic humility. As weeks turned into months, the story of Big Shaq's rescue became part of local legend, but its real impact was visible in the small, everyday changes in the community. People began looking out for each other more, checking on elderly neighbors during hot weather, and volunteering at local safety initiatives. Shaq's example had sparked a chain reaction of kindness and civic responsibility. His basketball team's performance improved too, not just in terms of wins and losses, but in how they supported each other on and off the court. They began volunteering together at local shelters and food banks, understanding that true strength lay in helping others. Coach Shaq showed us that being a hero isn't about being famous, one young player said during a team meeting. It's about being there for people when they need you. As summer turned to fall, life settled into a new normal. The burned apartment complex was being rebuilt, this time with better safety features. Shaq continued coaching, sharing his wisdom both about basketball and life. But now, when he looked at his players, he saw more than just athletes. He saw future community leaders, people who might one day face their own moments of truth and rise to the occasion. The arrival of winter brought new challenges and unexpected developments to Big Shaq's story. The rebuilt apartment complex was nearing completion, its modern facade standing as a symbol of renewal in the neighborhood. But for Shaq, the most significant changes were happening in less visible ways, particularly in how his act of heroism had sparked a ripple effect throughout the city. One cold December morning, Shaq received an unexpected call from the city council. They wanted him to help develop a community emergency response program, recognizing that his experience could help bridge the gap between professional emergency services and everyday citizens. Though initially hesitant about taking on such responsibility, Shaq remembered the faces of those he'd saved and knew he couldn't refuse. The program started small, with weekend workshops in the community center where Shaq usually coached basketball. He worked alongside firefighters and paramedics, teaching basic emergency response skills to local residents. What made these sessions special wasn't just the practical knowledge being shared, but the stories and experiences people brought to them. An older gentleman who attended the first workshop shared how he'd frozen during a minor kitchen fire in his home, realizing he didn't know what to do. "If my neighbor hadn't known how to use a fire extinguisher, things could have been much worse," he admitted. His story reinforced the importance of what they were doing, showing how even basic knowledge could save lives. The young mother and her twins from the fire became regular participants in these workshops. The mother, who had initially been too traumatized to even talk about the experience, found healing in helping others prepare for emergencies. Her twins, now a bit older, became the unofficial mascots of the program, their presence reminding everyone why they were there. During one particularly memorable session, Shaq organized a demonstration with the fire department. They set up controlled scenarios where people could practice what they'd learned. The elderly couple he'd saved from the fire came to watch, and the husband, now fully recovered, shared his perspective on the importance of community preparedness. "When you're in danger, you don't think about who's coming to help you, whether they're a professional firefighter or just a passing basketball coach," he said, giving Shaq a knowing look. "What matters is that someone knows what to do and has the courage to act. That's what we're all learning here." The program's success caught the attention of neighboring communities. Soon, Shaq found himself traveling to different parts of Los Angeles during weekends, helping other neighborhoods set up similar initiatives. His basketball team often accompanied him, demonstrating how young people could be valuable assets in community safety programs. One of Shaq's players, a quiet teenager who had always struggled with confidence, discovered a natural talent for teaching first aid. Watching this young man come out of his shell while showing others how to perform CPR brought tears to Shaq's eyes. Sometimes, he told his assistant coach, the greatest victories happen off the court. The winter months also brought an unexpected reunion. A firefighter who had responded to the apartment fire that night sought out Shaq at one of the workshops. He shared how Shaq's actions had inspired him to start a program within the fire department, reaching out to former athletes and sports coaches to become volunteer emergency responders. "You showed us something important that night," the firefighter explained. "Physical fitness and quick thinking, the same qualities that make great athletes, can make great emergency responders too. We've been overlooking a valuable resource in our community." This revelation led to a new dimension of Shaq's program. He began incorporating basic emergency response training into his basketball coaching, teaching his players that their athletic skills could serve a higher purpose. The drills he developed combined physical fitness with emergency scenarios, preparing young athletes to be community heroes. During a particularly harsh winter storm, the value of this training became clear. When heavy rains caused flooding in a nearby neighborhood, several of Shaq's players were among the first to help, using their strength and agility to help elderly residents evacuate their homes. They worked alongside emergency services, proving that community preparedness could make a real difference. The media caught wind of this story, and once again, Shaq found himself in the spotlight. This time, though, he was ready to use the attention constructively. In interviews, he emphasized the importance of community involvement in emergency preparedness, sharing how his own experience had shown him that heroes could come from anywhere. What happened that night at the apartment fire wasn't just about one person being brave, he would say. It was about recognizing that we all have the potential to help others. Sometimes we just need the knowledge and confidence to act. As winter deepened, Shaq's initiative continued to grow. The community center began offering certified emergency response courses, and local businesses started sponsoring equipment and training materials. What had started as one man's heroic act was evolving into a sustainable program that could save countless lives. The transformation in the community was profound. People who had once been strangers now greeted each other warmly, knowing they were part of something larger than themselves. The sense of helplessness that often accompanies disasters was being replaced by a feeling of empowerment and preparedness. For Shaq, watching this change was more rewarding than any basketball championship. He saw how his moment of courage had unleashed a wave of positive change, proving that sometimes the greatest acts of heroism lie not in the dramatic rescue itself, but in the quiet determination to ensure such rescues become less necessary. As spring approached Los Angeles, bringing with it new beginnings, Big Shaq's influence continued to grow in unexpected ways. The story of his heroic rescue had evolved into something larger than himself, touching lives far beyond the original apartment complex. One morning, while preparing for basketball practice, he received news that would take his journey in an entirely new direction. A prestigious university's public safety department had been studying the success of his community emergency response program. They wanted to use it as a model for a nationwide initiative, combining sports training with emergency preparedness. The proposal would bring Shaq's methodology to communities across the country, but it would also mean stepping away from his daily coaching duties more often. The decision weighed heavily on his mind. His team was preparing for the state championships, and he had always believed in being there for his players. During a heart-to-heart conversation with his team, one of his senior players spoke up, "Coach, you taught us that sometimes helping others means stepping out of our comfort zone. Maybe it's your turn to do that now." The wisdom in those words struck Shaq deeply. He realized that his players had internalized not just his basketball lessons, but his larger messages about responsibility and community service. With their blessing, he agreed to participate in the university's program while maintaining his local coaching duties through a modified schedule. The program's first major test came during a regional sports conference in San Diego. Shaq was invited to demonstrate how athletic training could be integrated with emergency response skills. He brought along two of his most dedicated players, who had become certified in first aid and emergency response through his community program. During the demonstration, an actual emergency occurred. A participant suffered a severe allergic reaction, and before the paramedics could arrive, Shaq's players sprang into action. Their quick thinking and calm response, applying their training in a real-life situation, proved more powerful than any planned presentation could have been. The incident made headlines: basketball coach's emergency program saves life at conference. But for Shaq, the real victory was seeing his students become teachers in their own right. The confidence and composure they showed under pressure validated everything he had been working toward. Back in Los Angeles, the community continued to evolve. The rebuilt apartment complex had become a model for urban safety, with regular fire drills and emergency response training for all residents. The elderly couple Shaq had saved now led monthly community meetings, sharing their experience to emphasize the importance of preparation and unity. The twin toddlers, now preschoolers, had become unofficial ambassadors for fire safety in their kindergarten. Their mother worked with local schools to implement age-appropriate emergency awareness programs, often sharing how Shaq's quick thinking had saved their lives that fateful night. One particularly touching moment came when Shaq received a handmade card from the twins' class. Each child had drawn their own version of a community hero, and while many featured traditional firefighters or police officers, several showed a tall figure in a basketball uniform helping others. The innocence and impact of these drawings moved Shaq to tears. The success of the program attracted attention from professional sports organizations. They saw the potential in combining athletic training with community service and emergency response. Several professional basketball players reached out to Shaq, wanting to implement similar programs in their own communities. During a major sports convention, Shaq shared the stage with professional athletes and emergency response experts. His message was simple but powerful: every athlete has the potential to be a hero in their community. The same discipline, quick thinking, and teamwork that make us better on the court can help us save lives off it. The convention led to partnerships with several sports foundations, creating scholarships for young athletes who showed dedication to both sports and community service. Shaq insisted that these scholarships focus not just on athletic achievement, but on character and commitment to helping others. In his own community, the impact continued to deepen. Local businesses began offering internships to students who completed both athletic and emergency response training. The program was creating not just better athletes, but more responsible, capable citizens. One of the most significant developments came when a nearby high school faced a crisis during a severe weather event. The emergency response training provided through Shaq's program helped students and staff respond effectively, preventing what could have been a dangerous situation from becoming tragic. The incident prompted the school board to consider implementing similar programs across the district. Shaq found himself consulting with education officials, helping them understand how sports programs could be enhanced to include vital life-saving skills. Throughout all this growth and change, Shaq never forgot the night that started it all. He kept the scorched basketball shoes he'd worn during the rescue, displaying them in the community center as a reminder that ordinary moments can become extraordinary opportunities to help others. The story of Big Shaq's heroic rescue had transformed from a single act of courage into a movement that continued to grow and evolve. But perhaps the most beautiful aspect was how it had revealed the hero potential in everyone it touched, from young athletes to elderly residents, proving that community strength comes from unity, preparation, and the willingness to help others in their moment of need. As summer returned to Los Angeles, bringing with it memories of that fateful night a year ago, Big Shaq found himself reflecting on how much had changed. The morning began with him visiting the rebuilt apartment complex, now a beacon of community safety and unity. The fresh paint and modern safety features told only part of the story. The real transformation lay in the hearts of the people who called it home. During his visit, he encountered the building's new safety coordinator, a former resident who had been inspired by Shaq's actions to change careers. "You know," she told him, while showing him the newly installed emergency response equipment, "what you did that night wasn't just about saving lives. You showed us that one person's courage can change an entire community." The impact of his actions had rippled out in ways he never could have imagined. Local businesses had started incorporating emergency response training into their employee development programs. Restaurant workers, shop owners, and office staff were learning basic rescue techniques, creating a network of prepared citizens ready to help in crisis situations. One particularly moving development came from an unexpected quarter. A group of former gang members, touched by the story of community unity, approached Shaq about starting a youth mentorship program. They wanted to channel their street smarts and physical abilities into something positive, combining basketball training with emergency response skills. Shaq worked with them to create Street Smart Heroes, a program that gave at-risk youth a new purpose. The transformation in these young people was remarkable. Many who had once been seen as troublemakers were now becoming community leaders, using their knowledge of the streets to help identify and assist vulnerable residents during emergencies. The program caught the attention of social workers and law enforcement officials. They saw how it was not just preventing crime but building bridges between different segments of the community. One police officer remarked, "We're seeing former rivals working together to help others. It's changing the whole dynamic of these neighborhoods." During a community festival celebrating the program's success, something unexpected happened. A teenage boy approached Shaq, his eyes filled with tears. He revealed that his older brother had been in the apartment complex the night of the fire but had never come forward. "He was there doing something he shouldn't have been," the boy explained, "but you saved his life anyway. He's changed since then, got clean, went back to school. He was too ashamed to thank you himself, but he wanted you to know." This revelation touched Shaq deeply. It showed him that heroic acts don't just save lives in the moment, they can change the entire trajectory of a person's future. He began incorporating this message into his training sessions, teaching that every moment of courage could have far-reaching consequences nobody could predict. The basketball season brought new challenges and opportunities. Shaq's team had qualified for the state championships, but more importantly, they had become known for their community service. Other teams started requesting joint training sessions, not just for basketball skills but for emergency response techniques as well. During one such session, a powerful moment occurred. A young player from a rival team shared how his grandmother had survived a heart attack because his teammate knew CPR, a skill learned through their school's adoption of Shaq's program. The rivalry between the teams dissolved as they realized they were part of something much bigger than basketball. The media continued to follow Shaq's story, but their focus had shifted. Instead of just highlighting his heroic rescue, they now reported on the ongoing impact of his programs. A documentary filmmaker began following the Street Smart Heroes, capturing how these young people were transforming their communities. One of the most touching segments featured the twins from the fire, now kindergartners, visiting a Street Smart Heroes session. The former gang members taught them simple safety rules through games and songs. Watching these once hardened young men gently guiding tiny children through emergency drills brought tears to many eyes. The university partnership had expanded beyond initial expectations. Research showed that communities implementing Shaq's combined sports and emergency response program saw significant decreases in both emergency response times and youth crime rates. The data was clear: when people felt empowered to help others, entire communities became safer. During a graduation ceremony for the latest group of program participants, Shaq noticed something remarkable. Among the graduates were people from all walks of life: young athletes, former gang members, business professionals, and retirees. They represented every part of the community, united by their commitment to helping others. One elderly woman, receiving her emergency response certification, summed it up perfectly: "I used to think heroes were special people who did extraordinary things. Now I understand that heroes are ordinary people who choose to care extraordinarily about others." The story of Big Shaq's rescue had evolved into something far greater than one man's brave act. It had become a testament to the power of community, proving that when people come together with purpose and compassion, they can create lasting change that touches countless lives. As autumn leaves began to color the Los Angeles landscape, Big Shaq's community initiative faced its biggest challenge yet. A severe economic downturn had hit the city, threatening the funding for many social programs, including his emergency response training. The community center where it all began was at risk of closing, and the future of street smart heroes hung in the balance. But Shaq had learned that the true strength of a community reveals itself during difficult times. During a crucial meeting with program participants, he listened as people from all walks of life stepped forward with solutions. A local business owner offered unused warehouse space for training sessions. Former gang members volunteered to maintain the equipment. The elderly couple from the fire organized a neighborhood fundraising campaign. The young mother of the twins, now working as a school administrator, rallied the education community. She helped create a network of school-based training centers, ensuring the program could continue even if the community center closed. "My children are alive because of what this program represents," she told the school board. "We can't let financial troubles stop us from saving more lives." The situation took an unexpected turn when one of Shaq's original basketball players, now in college, returned with an innovative proposal. He had developed a mobile app that could connect trained community responders with people in need during emergencies. The app would also include training videos and safety tips, making the program's resources accessible to anyone with a smartphone. This digital innovation caught the attention of tech companies in Silicon Valley. A group of investors, moved by the program's impact, offered to fund the app's development and provide sustainable financial support for the community training programs. However, they wanted to commercialize certain aspects of the initiative, creating a potential conflict between maintaining the program's grassroots spirit and ensuring its survival. Shaq faced a difficult decision. During a community meeting to discuss the proposal, he listened as people shared their thoughts. The debate was passionate but respectful, reflecting the values of cooperation and understanding that the program had fostered. An elderly resident stood up and said something that resonated with everyone: "Sometimes, helping more people means accepting help ourselves." After careful consideration and community consultation, Shaq worked out a compromise. The basic emergency response training would remain free and community-based, while advanced certifications and specialized programs would generate the revenue needed to sustain and expand their work. This hybrid model ensured that the program's core mission of community service remained intact while creating opportunities for growth. The app's launch became a celebration of community resilience. During the event, a surprise guest appeared, the firefighter who had responded to the original apartment fire. Now a fire chief, he announced a citywide partnership between professional emergency services and community responders. "What started as one man's brave act," he declared, "has grown into a model for modern community safety." The success of this public-private partnership drew attention from cities across the country. Delegations visited Los Angeles to learn how they could implement similar programs in their communities. Shaq found himself traveling more frequently, sharing his experience and helping other cities adapt the program to their unique needs. During one such visit to Chicago, he witnessed the program's impact in a different context. A community facing gang violence had implemented the Street Smart Heroes initiative, transforming former rivals into neighborhood protectors. The sight of young men who once fought each other now working together to keep their community safe brought tears to Shaq's eyes. Back in Los Angeles, the program continued to evolve. The twins, now first graders, had started a school safety club with their classmates. Their initiative, though small, symbolized how the next generation was embracing the values of community service and mutual support. "Even little helpers can make a big difference," one of the twins explained during a school presentation, drawing chuckles and tears from the audience. The tech partnership proved more valuable than expected when an earthquake struck a nearby community. The app quickly coordinated local responders, directing trained volunteers to where they were needed most. Professional emergency services praised the system's effectiveness in supplementing their efforts, particularly in reaching isolated or overlooked areas. Local businesses began offering incentives for employees who completed the training program. Some companies provided paid time off for emergency response activities, while others included certification bonuses in their benefits packages. This corporate support helped create a sustainable model for community emergency preparedness. The story reached new heights when a major sports equipment manufacturer offered to create a special line of emergency response training gear, with proceeds supporting community programs. Shaq insisted that the equipment be affordable and accessible to all communities, regardless of their economic status. The company agreed, creating a Buy One, Give One program that provided free equipment to underfunded neighborhoods. During a demonstration of the new equipment, something remarkable happened. A group of young athletes from different neighborhoods, some from areas traditionally in conflict, worked together seamlessly in a simulated emergency scenario. Their teamwork demonstrated how the program had broken down long-standing barriers between communities. The university research team studying the program's impact released their findings, showing significant improvements in emergency response times, community cohesion, and youth engagement in participating neighborhoods. More surprisingly, they found decreased rates of anxiety and depression among program participants, suggesting that helping others had therapeutic benefits. As autumn deepened, Shaq reflected on how a crisis that threatened their work had ultimately made it stronger. The community's response to potential program cuts had revealed the true depth of their commitment to helping others. What had started as one man's heroic act had become a self-sustaining movement, powered by the collective will of countless individuals choosing to make a difference in their world. As winter settled over Los Angeles, bringing unusual cold and rain, Big Shaq's program faced an unexpected test. A series of powerful storms had created flooding in several low-lying neighborhoods, putting thousands of residents at risk. This was the moment when all their training and preparation would be put to the ultimate test. The emergency response app buzzed across the city as community volunteers mobilized. Street Smart Heroes members, equipped with their new gear, worked alongside professional emergency services to help evacuate vulnerable residents. The basketball court at the community center transformed into a temporary shelter, where people from all walks of life came together to help their neighbors. During the crisis, something remarkable happened. The elderly couple from the apartment fire, despite their own challenges, organized other seniors to prepare hot meals for displaced families. The twins' mother coordinated childcare activities, keeping young evacuees calm and entertained while their parents dealt with the emergency. Former gang members used their street knowledge to reach isolated residents who might have been overlooked. One particularly powerful moment came when a group of teenagers from Shaq's basketball program used their training to rescue a family trapped by rising waters. These young athletes, who months ago had been focused solely on their jump shots, now worked with the precision of seasoned emergency responders. Their actions saved lives and proved that the program's impact went far beyond sports. The media coverage of the community's response to the flooding caught national attention. News outlets were amazed to see such a well-coordinated civilian response working seamlessly with professional emergency services. The story wasn't just about the rescue efforts, it was about how a community had transformed itself from passive bystanders into active participants in emergency response. A touching scene unfolded when an elderly resident, initially resistant to evacuation, finally agreed to leave his home after speaking with one of the Street Smart Heroes members. The young man, once known for causing trouble in the neighborhood, now showed remarkable patience and compassion in helping the senior citizen gather his essential belongings and beloved pet cat. The success of the community response during the floods led to an unexpected development. FEMA representatives visited Los Angeles to study the program, considering it as a model for national disaster preparedness. They were particularly impressed by how the combination of athletic training and emergency response skills had created a core of capable, physically fit community volunteers. Back at the community center, Shaq gathered his team for a reflection session. The young athletes shared their experiences from the flood response, many still processing the intense emotions of their first real emergency. One player's words particularly struck home: "Coach, when you saved those people from the fire, you showed us what being a hero means. Now we understand it's not about fame, it's about being there for others when they need you most." The university, partnering with the program, conducted interviews with flood survivors, documenting the impact of the community response. One story stood out. A single mother described how Street Smart Heroes members had not only helped her family evacuate but had returned later to help clean up and repair flood damage. "They didn't just save us," she said, "they showed us we weren't alone." The winter crisis also revealed new applications for their training. The app's success in coordinating flood response led to its adaptation for other types of emergencies. Tech volunteers worked with community members to add features for earthquake preparedness, fire response, and even mental health crisis intervention. The twins, now regular fixtures at community events, started sharing their story with other children affected by the floods. Their simple message about being brave and helping others resonated with young evacuees, helping them process their own experiences with the natural disaster. Their mother watched with pride as her children transformed their own trauma into hope for others. Local businesses that had supported the program saw firsthand how their investment had paid off. The emergency response training had not only saved lives during the floods but had created a more resilient community. More companies came forward, offering support for program expansion and creating job opportunities for certified community responders. During a city council meeting to discuss the flood response, something unprecedented happened. Representatives from rival neighborhoods stood together, describing how the crisis had helped them see past their differences. The sight of former adversaries working side by side during the emergency had done more to heal old wounds than years of formal intervention programs. Shaq's basketball team's reputation evolved beyond their athletic achievements. They became known as the community champions, respected not just for their game skills but for their service to others. Other schools began incorporating community service and emergency response training into their sports programs, creating a network of young athletes ready to help in times of crisis. The elderly couple who survived the original fire celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary at the community center. The event turned into a celebration of community resilience, with people from all walks of life sharing stories of how the program had touched their lives. The couple announced the creation of a scholarship fund for young people pursuing emergency response training, ensuring their legacy of gratitude would continue to benefit others. As the floodwaters receded and the community began to recover, Shaq reflected on how far they had come from that first night of the apartment fire. What had started as one man's instinctive act of courage had grown into a movement that had not only saved lives but had fundamentally changed how people viewed their role in the community. The recent crisis had proved that ordinary people, when trained and united, could accomplish extraordinary things. 2 years had passed since that fateful night of the apartment fire, and Los Angeles was preparing for a special anniversary celebration. The event wasn't just about commemorating a single act of heroism anymore, it had become a celebration of how one moment of courage had transformed an entire community. The rebuilt apartment complex, now a symbol of resilience and unity, hosted the gathering that brought together people from all walks of life. The morning began with a ceremony unlike any other. The city mayor announced the establishment of the Community Heroes Initiative, a citywide program based on Shaq's model of combining athletic training with emergency response. But the real surprise came when the mayor revealed that the community center where it all began would be renamed the Big Shaq Community Safety and Sports Center. Shaq, characteristically humble, tried to redirect the attention to others during his speech. "Standing here today," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "I see the real heroes. I see teenagers who chose to help others instead of joining gangs. I see former rivals working together to keep their neighborhoods safe. I see elderly couples teaching young children about community spirit. What happened 2 years ago wasn't about one person being brave, it was about discovering the hero in each of us." The twins, now second graders, presented Shaq with a special gift, a handmade book titled Our Community Heroes, featuring drawings and stories from children across the city. Each page showed how the program had touched young lives, from playground safety monitors to junior first aid helpers. Their mother, watching proudly, remembered the night Shaq had carried her children to safety, never imagining how that moment would spark such widespread change. The Street Smart Heroes program had evolved beyond anyone's expectations. Former gang members who had once terrorized these streets now led emergency response teams, their knowledge of the community proving invaluable during crises. One of them spoke at the ceremony, his words resonating deeply. "Before this program, we thought being tough meant causing fear. Now we know true strength comes from helping others feel safe." The emergency response app had become a model for cities worldwide. Tech companies and humanitarian organizations were adapting it for different contexts, from natural disaster response to community health initiatives. The elderly couple who survived the fire had become its most enthusiastic promoters, teaching other seniors how to use the technology to stay connected and safe. During the celebration, a surprise video conference connected them with communities across the country that had implemented similar programs. From Chicago to Miami, New York to Seattle, people shared stories of how the model had transformed their neighborhoods. Each community had adapted the program to their unique needs while maintaining its core principles of athletic training, emergency response, and community service. The university research team presented their long-term study results, showing how the program had created lasting positive changes. Crime rates had decreased, emergency response times had improved, and most importantly, community bonds had strengthened. But the most significant finding was the program's impact on young people. Participants showed higher rates of college attendance, community involvement, and career success. Local businesses that had supported the program shared their perspectives. What had started as corporate social responsibility had evolved into a genuine community partnership. Companies now actively recruited program graduates, recognizing that their combination of physical training, emergency response skills, and community commitment made them valuable employees. The basketball court where Shaq still coached had become more than a sports venue. It was now a place where young athletes learned that their physical abilities could serve a higher purpose. His team had just won the state championship, but their proudest achievement was their record of community service hours. As one player put it, "We're not just athletes anymore, we're guardians of our community." A touching moment came when the firefighter who had responded to the original apartment fire presented Shaq with an honorary fire chief badge. "2 years ago," he said, "we arrived at a fire to find lives already saved. Today, we're part of a network of professional and community responders working together to keep our city safe. This is the future of emergency response." The celebration included demonstrations of the program's various components. Young athletes showed how basketball drills had been modified to incorporate emergency response training. Former gang members demonstrated conflict resolution techniques they now use to mediate neighborhood disputes. Senior citizens led workshops on community organizing and emergency preparedness for different age groups. The Twins Safety Club had grown into a citywide network of young safety ambassadors. Children who once felt powerless in emergencies now knew they could make a difference. Their simple message, that everyone can be a helper, had resonated with schools across the city, creating a new generation of community-minded citizens. As evening approached, the community gathered for a candlelight ceremony. Each flame represented a life touched by the program, creating a sea of light that illuminated the gathering darkness. Shaq stood among them, no longer just a basketball coach who had once saved lives from a fire, but a symbol of how ordinary people could inspire extraordinary change. The final moment of the celebration came when Shaq announced his plans for the future. The program would expand to include mental health response training, environmental emergency preparedness, and more youth leadership opportunities. But more importantly, he announced a mentorship initiative to help other communities start their own programs, ensuring that the spirit of that first brave act would continue to spread. As the celebration wound down, Shaq took a quiet moment to visit the spot where he had first pulled his car over 2 years ago, seeing smoke rise against the sunset. The rebuilt apartment complex stood proud against the darkening sky, its windows glowing with warm light. A small plaque marked the spot, but it wasn't about him. It was dedicated to all those who choose to help others in their moment of need. The story of Big Shaq's heroic rescue had become something far greater than one man's brave act. It had evolved into a testament to the power of community, proving that when ordinary people choose to be extraordinary, the impact can echo through generations. As he stood there, watching families return to their homes and young athletes head to evening practice, Shaq smiled, knowing that the real story wasn't about the lives he had saved that night, it was about the countless lives that would be touched by the ripples of that one moment of courage.